Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This is Eisenherz and today I want to talk about my recent experience playing Urza in preparation for an upcoming tournament. To be a little bit more specific, let's talk about my abysmal win rate and how I'm trying to fix it for the tournament. So let's get started. For my tournament prep, I'm of course tracking all of my games in order to optimize my piloting, and in my last 20 games I had a win rate of only 15%, which is a huge drop from my previous win rate, which was about 40%. Obviously, I need to do something about this because this way I can't expect to be successful at the tournament. So the first question I ask myself is, what was the difference between the last 20 games and the current 20 games? After analyzing all the games, I came to the conclusion that there were two major differences. So let's look at those. The first and most important difference is that the previous 20 games I tracked had no time limit. We used to play the games out and I was able to eventually assemble a combo in the very late game. That of course was great for my win rate, but the current 20 games have an 80-minute time limit because that's what the tournament will have. And this led me to have a total of 8 draws in the last 20 games. So the first thing that's apparently a huge issue for my win rate at the moment is that I'm not able to close out the game within an 80-minute time frame. I am, however, pretty good at controlling the board for around 80 minutes, which means that I can secure draws pretty well. So let's keep that in mind for later. The second difference between my previous 20 games and my current 20 games is that the current 20 games aren't truly random. I had a lot of games against my cousin who plays Malcolm Kedis and who I'm actually coaching in preparation for the upcoming tournament. So I know his deck and his play patterns really well. I also had a lot of games against Nimrus and Talion because those are super popular at the moment, and both of those decks are also control decks just like Urza is. Because of that, it was both easier to control the board in order to stop my opponents from winning, but it was also harder for me to assemble a win myself. So obviously, knowing your meta really well will help you to control the board more efficiently, but also playing against more control decks will make it harder for you to actually win the game yourself. While I have no impact on what my opponents choose to play in the tournament, I actually have an impact on my meta knowledge. So I will obviously keep that in mind for the tournament prep. Know your meta, know your opponents, and know how to handle them. These are the two main differences. But let's have a look at the games I actually won, and let's have a look at the similarities between those games in order to see which plays actually carry me to a win. In my previous 20 games, the average winning turn was around turn 6 or turn 7. But there were some outliers, like a game I won on turn 10. The longer games obviously profit off of me having a lot of control pieces and counter spells, in order to stop my opponents from winning the game and opening up a window of opportunity for myself to present a combo. The more reasonable wins, so the wins around turn 6 or 7, all had one thing in common. I had an early counter engine in play, which carried me through the game and allowed me to draw all the control pieces and combo pieces I needed to win the game. In my current 20 games, the average winning turn was also turn 6 or 7. And the games I won all had one thing in common. Guess what that is? Yes, I had an early card draw engine or a way to have an explosive burst of card draw. In one game I draked a Daryl, which drew me a ton of cards over multiple turns. In the other game I had a turn 2 Mystic Remora, which also drew me a ton of cards. And in the last game I was able to copy a Consecrated Sphinx with a Weir of Invention tutoring up Imposter Mech, which allowed me to draw around 30 to 40 cards in my draw step. So apparently, drawing a ton of cards wins me more games in timed rounds than having a ton of interaction. Who would have thought? Next, let's have a look at the games that ended up being draws. What similarities did those games have? What did the mulligans look like and what did the pot composition look like? Most of the games that ended up being draws obviously had me play a lot of control pieces and counterspells. The 3 games in which I was able to actually present a win were the games in which I had either the One Ring or Mystic Remora or both in play. One win attempt was stopped by double Orcish Bowmasters, which hit me for lethal damage in my final turn. The other one didn't work out because I missed a ton of land drops and was exactly 1 mana short in order to go off. And the third one was stopped by Bloodchief Ascension. So 3 of my 8 draws were actually really good games for me in which I was able to present a win and had a reasonable chance of actually winning the game. The other ones were games in which I wasn't able to draw enough cards in order to have impactful plays other than controlling the board with counterspells and control pieces, which eventually allowed me to secure a draw. Now, if I was able to turn half of my draws into wins, That would give me a win rate of 30%, which would actually be a huge step in the right direction. So before I look into the games that I lost, let's have a look at my findings regarding the games that were draws, in order to see what measures I can take in order to turn those draws into wins. So bottom line, my wins all had one thing in common. I had an early card draw engine in game, which carried me through the game and gave me all the pieces I needed to control and combo off. My draws can be split into two. There were the ones in which I had a card draw engine, which were also the ones in which I could present a win. And then there were the ones in which I didn't have a card draw engine and was just able to control the board as long as I needed in order to secure a draw. So after careful analysis, I came to the genius conclusion that in order to turn half of my draws into wins, I need to focus on deploying an early card draw engine. Prioritizing an early card draw engine instead of casting my commander early will, in theory, give me all the pieces I need to cast my commander, control the board, and eventually combo off for the win. This, of course, seems very obvious, but aggressively mulling for an early card draw engine also means that we mull away hands that would give us an early Urza, which is kind of counterintuitive in a control deck that is focused around its commander. Interestingly though, these genius findings also correspond with my recent experience playing against Nimrys and Talion a lot. Those two commanders have the inherent advantage that they are the card draw engines that you need for a control deck, and you have access to them in the command zone. So what a Talion or Nimrys deck can do is it can easily just mull for fast mana and counterspells, and by doing that it will be able to control the board and constantly refuel its hand. We can't do that in Urza, because if we do that we will be able to counter a few spells here and there, maybe deploy a hate piece, and then be stuck with doing nothing because we will not be able to refuel our hand, because we do not have a card draw engine in the command zone. This means that we will inevitably run out of resources and not get any closer to a win, just closer to a draw. So my thinking is that if I mull more aggressively for a card draw engine and prioritize that before casting Urza, I will be able to draw into all the pieces I need in order to control and combo. Now, even if mulling away a hand with an early Urza cast and some control spells means that I will sometimes lose to a turn 1, turn 2, turn 3 ad nauseum, that's a trade-off I have to accept, and I would rather build and play to my strength, which are in the mid to late game, than try to focus around the early game and then just run out of resources doing nothing the rest of the game. This approach might seem negligent and opposed to the mid-range control concept, but in fact it is not, because I'm not actually controlling the game if I mull for interaction against the turbo player and eventually run into a brick wall of doing nothing until the game is either a draw or I lose to the next win attempt. Taking the risk of losing in the early game is necessary in order to not fall into the trap of trying to police the table. You have to keep in mind that there are two other players in the pot, and they also have to do their part in order to not lose the game. So in order to play mid-range control efficiently and correctly, I need to grind, and I can only grind if I draw more cards. My strength is in the mid and late game, so I will try to focus on that. I need to mull aggressively for card draw engines, even if that means that I lose to the occasional turn 2 ad nauseum. And that's exactly what I'm going to do for my next tracking cycle. Mull aggressively for a card draw engine, develop control over the board around turn 3 to turn 5, and trying to present a win around turn 6 or turn 7. I will definitely keep you guys updated on that, and if my approach proves to be successful, I will focus on the next issue, which is turning my losses into wins. Maybe I have to switch up my piloting against certain pots, or maybe I just have to add a few new cards in order to make my deck more efficient for a tournament. Who knows? We'll definitely see. But let's take one step at a time, and for now, focus on turning my draws into wins. And that's it. What do you think about this assessment? Did I miss anything important? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you enjoy my content and want to support me, don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, hop over to my Discord server, and please consider becoming a patron. I have different tiers set up, so there's something for everyone. Finally, I also provide one-on-one coaching and brewing support, so if you're interested in bringing your piloting to the next level, hit me up via DMs on Twitter or Discord. This is Eisenherz and auf Wiedersehen.